Lots more information coming in this morning about those awful events in Nottingham, a city, I'd say a country, really in mourning for those 3 dead. We've yet to have a name or any details for the fifth man in his 50s, the van driver who was stabbed and his van stolen and then used to ram into 3 others at a bus stop yesterday. One, as I say, still critically injured in hospital. But we do know the identities of the first 2 victims of a knife rampage yesterday, and they are Barnaby Webber, aged 19, a student, and his friend Grace Kumar, another 19-year-old student at Nottingham University. Tributes have been paid to them by their families. The family of Barnaby Webber has described their complete devastation at the senseless murder of their son, saying he was a beautiful, brilliant, bright young man with everything in life to look forward to, that he was at the start of his journey into adulthood and was developing into a wonderful young man. And I have to say, I think every single parent today, I'm a parent of a 16-year-old, hopefully one day go off to uni, whether your kid's going to uni or not, one day going off living on their own, the thought that a night out will end in a tragic, senseless loss like this is just beyond our concern, beyond our belief. So many of you are getting in touch. Now, look, this is a case that the 31-year-old suspect who is in custody is being claimed that he has mental health problems, that he is West African, legally here, resident in this country legally, but not a British citizen, that he has a history of mental illness, or if not, no history of a criminal record. But so many of you are getting in touch, very unhappy about what is going on in terms of someone being in this country and not protecting our citizens. Mary in West Sussex says, we're too passive as a nation. The victims of any families of these sorts of atrocities committed by a migrant should sue the government from not protecting its citizens. John says we need a government and a Home Office that care about who they let into our country. We must be stricter in our checks. Cyril says, Julia, I know it's my out-of-touch old thinking, but there are cases where the death penalty is the only answer. I have 3 grandchildren, aged 18 to 23. I am so sad today. Many others of you are getting in touch saying similar things. Daniel says the 2 main parties cannot or will not protect our people or our borders. This cannot carry on. Revolt is coming. Well, let's talk right now to Ben Bradley. He's Conservative MP for Mansfield, a short drive from Nottingham. He's also the leader of Nottinghamshire County Council and joins us now. Good morning to you, Ben.
Morning, Julie. How are you?
Well, I mean, I say I'm a damn sight better than the families of those who've lost loved ones or the person still in hospital today fighting critical injuries. Look, so many people reading and learning about this yesterday. This was all playing out as I was on air yesterday, and people reading the details and hearing the details today are going to be feeling that sense of, this could happen to me, this could happen to my child, walking down the street, yes, late at night at the end of a party, end of term, and someone goes on a knife rampage. Look, we don't know any more details about the suspect. They've not been named. They've not as yet been charged. But many people are making the point that as soon as it's sort of not ruled out completely, but it's thought to be not terrorism, the attention seems to go away. Mental health problem, foreign national, oh well, nothing to see here. That's just not how most British people see it.
No, I don't think it will be. I mean, the first thing I have to say, of course, is it's absolutely devastating for the city and the residents of Nottinghamshire who, feel and felt like Nottingham was a safe place to be, is a warm, welcoming place. And it is a worry, as you've just described, and, particularly a huge student population in Nottingham, lots of parents with children living away from home for the first time and all of those challenges. So it's been an awful 24 hours. The city's come together. The community's come together. There were vigils and kind of people putting their arms around each other last night, really, and hopefully I'm sure that will continue for the next coming days, and we'll try to recover and support people. But it is a fair point, and you won't be surprised at my view, Julia, that being in Britain is a privilege, not a right, and that actually if that is abused, then you shouldn't be here. Now, that is an important conversation. I agree with a lot of frustrations that have been raised. I do think that if you're not a British citizen, you commit particularly violent crimes in this country, you shouldn't be here. Yeah. I also think that's an important debate for us to have away from the heat of this particular circumstance, and you
Yeah.
can't do that in this kind of emotional context.
But we do seem to have cases again and again where we have foreign nationals living in this country, some legal, some illegal. We should not tarring everybody with the same sort of, a channel migrant brush. But this man was here legally. He came here, we understand, in his teenage years, now 31, the suspect who is being held. But no history of criminal record, but a history of mental illness, but a history of violence, we understand. Now, a lot of people will say, look, we can be very sympathetic, and someone may have issues, but there's also an argument where, look, we've got enough criminals of our own, we've got enough terrorists of our own, we've got enough people with serious mental illness who could be a risk to people. Although, by the way, lots of people are also getting in touch, pointing out that the vast majority of people with mental illness are not a risk to anybody at all, and perhaps more risk to themselves than certainly anybody else. We need to make that clear. But we don't need to import people, and once someone we discover is someone who is a potential threat to other people with a history of violence, why are they still in this country, people would be asking.
And it's a very fair and right question. I think, as I say, if you're not a British citizen, being allowed to live in this country is a privilege and not a right. And I do think that the first duty of governments, of anybody in that space, is to protect British citizens first and foremost. We have that debate on a regular basis around migration at the minute. There's no indication that this chap was not meant to be here or not allowed to be here in the first instance. He's had a legal right to stay. But I do think that if you are convicted of violent crimes, then you should be removed, full stop. As you say, it shouldn't be for us to have to pay for other people's criminals from other countries, quite frankly. Yeah. But it does pose a risk. I also think, though, that in the immediate aftermath of this particular event, the most important thing in this 24-hour period and over the coming days is to allow people to grieve, to allow communities to try and knit some of this back together. And from my point of view, my role in this is to try and support people to get their heads around this and to feel okay.
Yeah, indeed. We often, we saw vigils last night and people laying flowers, and a lot of people, family members, friends, and people shocked in the local community. I mean, some of the people who were speaking on this station and others over the last 24 hours, having this play out on their street. I mean, really very, very, very overwhelming and difficult to cope with for a lot of people. But I do worry, in whether it's a terrorist attack or whatever motivation, police say they are keeping their minds open on this. We do in this country seem to we have a vigil. There are lots of platitudes that are spoken by the Prime Minister, the opposition, the Chief Constables, the Home Secretary, and then we move on. And we just, nothing to see here. There is obviously an issue in terms of people in this country who are not getting adequate mental health care. There's obviously an issue with people in this country who are known to the police or to the authorities who could be a threat. Nothing is done. We know when it's terrorism, we're told, invariably it's somebody who was on a watch list and then taken off it. There is a real feeling in this country, I think, people, that there is, lawless Britain. We can't control our borders. We can't keep people safe on the streets. The police aren't there for us when we need them. And that's an understandable feeling, isn't it?
I certainly understand the concern. I think in the case of Nottingham, Nottingham is a very safe city. Crime levels are not particularly high. Violent crime is not particularly high compared to anywhere else. The feeling of shock when you see this on your doorstep comes from the fact that it is so out of, it's not like we have this all the time, is it? It is so out of the blue, and people have seen it on the telly in London or in other countries, and it's awful. But when it is on your doorstep, it really brings it home. And there will be thousands of people around the city who know people in the families who are affected by this, and the people who have died. So it really does bring that strong emotional reaction. I don't disagree with anything you've said, Julia, in the sense of more needs to be done to tackle this, more needs to be done to make sure that our borders are controlled, to make sure that we are able to deport people who have convicted criminal offences. That's an argument I've made in Parliament very strongly, and will continue to do so with colleagues. I do think in the context of where we are, that's perhaps more publicly a debate for next week when we've done that. But I also think in the context of you said about words and platitudes and all the rest of it. When communities come together in the aftermath of these things, that's not led by the government. That's not led by us as politicians. That's communities, right? And the church ran the vigil yesterday. Community groups will step forward. That comes from the people and the residents, right? And Nottingham, as I say, is a warm and welcoming city, and it's people looking after people. It's not politicians trying to step into this stuff.
Very good point there, Ben Bradley. There's lots more I want to talk to you about, but I think we'll leave it there. Conservative MP, also leader of Nottinghamshire County Council there.